cookies, one cookie. They're empty calories after 6 o'clock.
Pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Oops.
Hello, this is Tara. Oh, okay. So is everything good then? Oh, okay. Tom, they want me to count down when you're ready, okay? Okay, should I go ahead? Okay, so 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4.
Years. We are absolutely delighted about that. We have a great moment tonight who I will go into in just a minute. And a year ago, we added an 11th bonus reading. So we have 10 readings and we added an 11th bonus reading. We wanted to invite a public who may be not historians, but have time to learn. So how definitely fits that criteria. And as I say before I introduce Paul, I want to say thank you all for being here tonight. We know that you have a lot of other things you could be doing tonight, and you're choosing to spend it here with us. So thank you very much for doing it. I'd also like to say the same thing and welcome the audience from who are live streaming virtually. Thank you for being here. We appreciate that. We want to welcome our Oregon Laureate Emerita, 2010, 2014, Paul Peterson, who is with us tonight. So we are delighted that Paul is here. So thank you. I want to say too that we do have a grant, and that this project is supported in part by a grant from the Clackamas County Cultural Coalition, managed by the Clackamas County Arts Alliance, and made possible by funding from the Oregon Cultural Trust. So we are very happy about that, and we thank the Oregon Cultural Trust. Some things you may have seen already. We do have a broadside of one of Paul's poems, which is on the green paper. So we have asked for you to take. If we don't have one, we have in the back, we'll get you one. We do have some refreshments. So if you'd like to avail yourself of the refreshments, that's what we're here for. So certainly after the reading, please do that and stay and visit. All the books are going to be available over here on the table. So he may say a little bit about that. And we've had a gift of some books too. One of our poets who read here gifted us with some of her books, and she won't be looking up. So we thank Melanie Green for that. And we also received some books from Early Press. So they are back there on the counter. That's what Early Press wanted to do, was get it out to people. And as they should. So we are very grateful for the gift from Early Press, and they are there for people to take. So please do that. I want to make some more thanks to the city of Milwaukie. The city of Milwaukie has supported us at the beginning, so we are delighted about that. Thank them. Secondly, we thank the Letting Library. And we are now here in the Letting Library, the new Letting Library, Those of us that have been coming to the poetry series for some time, remember that initially we were on house. We were in the old Milwaukie Library, which for those of us who grew up here, seemed like it was a library that had just been here. The two-story building was on this site. And we now have this building, which a lot of work went into, and so we're very grateful. Fits on the footprint of the land here, and it's long. So thank you, letting library, and our technician tonight is Terrell from Letting. Thank Terrell. We also want to thank the Milwaukie Poetry Series Poetry Committee. We have a committee that has worked on this very hard. As I say, you don't have something happen unless you have a group of people working on it. And so we do have an active committee. I think let's acknowledge that Bev is back here. And I acknowledge you. And I want to acknowledge long-time member of the poetry committee, now on the board, Richie. And Greg from the little lady that was one of the founders. And finally, when we started to get poetry. So that is great. And the other thing, because of our demand, we are conducting a survey, and we do want to get feedback. So there is a sheet that Deb has. And I think she's going to, well, she has it back there. She was holding it up a little bit ago. But if you can fill that out, that's helpful for us when we report back to the Clackamas County office. So again, thank you for being here. I'm looking forward to this. Those of you that saw the invitation may know that Paul and I had an opportunity to have a conversation via Zoom, which we put on the invitation. And the purpose of that was to hopefully provide some more information for those of you who know. And so those of you that have seen it may know a little bit about him already. He is currently retired. This was in the interview. Paul said he was retired. And he likes it so far. He is a recently retired professor of English at Westmont College in Santa Barbara, California, where he taught 35 years. He grew up in Corvallis, went to Wheaton College in Illinois, worked as a mountain guide in the Cascades and Sierra Nevadas, and earned his graduate degree in Washington State University. That was something I was particularly interested in as he had a writing residency in North Cascades National Park. That's some place that we went back and we love the North Cascades now. He has published 7 collections of poetry. His recent work is Somewhere Follow. He is also the author of 2 collections of creative nonfiction, Bright Shoots, Stimulus, To Build the Trail, and eco-fantasy romance, The Alpine Penguins, and a young adult Elizabethan time travel novel, All in the Garden Green. In addition, he served as co-editor for the anthology, Identifying Through Poets Respond to Shakespeare. The poems and essays that have appeared in Poetry, Image, Christian Century, and have also been published in Best American Poetry and Best American Spiritual Writing. More recently, the poems have been featured on Verse Daily and Writer's Almanac. He has served as poet laureate of Santa Barbara, artist in residence. I said that. North Cascades Local Poet. Each January, the last 15 years, he has hosted community reading for the work of William Stafford on the site of the Los Prietos Civilian Public Service Camp in Los Alamos National Park. Thank you for that. So, would you join me? Before we welcome Paul is going to read for about 40 minutes. Then we're going to have a question and answer period. So we'll have an opportunity to ask the questions. Would you join me in welcoming our poet this evening, Paul Willis?
Thank you, Tom. It's a real delight to be here, and I see some familiar faces out there. Goodness, I still know you people in Oregon. So comforting thought. I've been asked to begin with the poem that's on your green brush. I just after Groundhog Day. So as Tom said, I did grow up in the Dallas, and I ended up for most of my life in Santa Barbara, which still feels a little foreign to me, although you accept the good things where I'm running up. Just after Groundhog Day. Just after Groundhog Day, summer begins in Santa Barbara. Keen smells of blossoms layer the air. The yellow bloom of mustard weed and sourgrass, acacia, fulfilling their own prophecy on every side. Frogs erupt into Bronca, and out by the mailbox, where we linger to talk in the evening, mosquitoes gather to be with us, flitting against the silhouette of the islands at the foot of the street. All is latent, luscious, languorous, the tall grass under the oaks already thick and green and shining. Mornings in May could be like this in Oregon, when I got up to deliver papers on my bike. The houses slept amidst the waking of everything that was young again. The river, the sky, the big leaf maples, while I flung the news like birdsong, end over end, to every doorstep. Glad to be here in a beautiful library. I think libraries are one of my favorite places on earth. So I'll read a poem called Library, just to celebrate where we are. Library. From the blank hush of my cubicle, I listen to the library. Someone is coughing, someone confiding plans to a phone. In the cloistered cell next to mine, the sweet sound of a page turning. As a child, on summer afternoons, I sometimes rode with my father down the hill to his laboratory. He would dissect his newts and frogs, and I would walk under big leaf maples and dark sequoias to a library of 7 floors, to the coolness of the basement and its many books, a permanent prospect of borrowed joy. Those were the days when people did not think to talk in libraries, and the air kept a silence I could taste inside my spine. I would rejoin my father at the appointed hour, profoundly pleased with where I had been, carrying with me sacred space, a way of dwelling. After college, living at home a month or two, I took a job in the public library next to the 6th Street railroad tracks, where the clatter of trains and the quiet of words negotiated a broken truce. Shelving each book, I paused to consider chance details about the author, a rundown on the plot. Then I might see how the first chapter began and how the second. I am there in the aisle when the locomotive thrums down the street, its whistle calling to get on with the real work. The book still resting in my hands, the hopeless pleasure of chapter 3. I really watched that job. And then to my surprise, someone contacted me from the college board. They're the people who make the SAT and other exams, and they wanted to put this on an examination, a state high school examination. And I said, sure. I was flattered, and I thought, how stupid. You know, who wants to have your poem first encountered on a timed exam? That's real aesthetic of machine. And then I thought, what questions would they ask about the poem? Does the writer like libraries? Well, halfway between Corvallis, where I grew up, and Monmouth, next town north on Highway 99W, is a park along the Buckamute River called Helmet Park. Bet a few of you have been there. And a few years ago, I just was getting a little tired driving and pulled off to stop, and some memories began to accumulate at Helmet Park. I turn off 99 to rest my eyes, parking under the Douglas fir, the big leaf maples, century-old farms of my cousins and uncles round about. Maybe 50 years ago, on this brown grass, a department picnic, my father, with his newly minted PhD, helping himself to baked beans that soaked through the paper plates, and I observing a softball game of teachers, graduate students, and children, much too shy to play myself. But the light, low and rich in the sky, the fresh spring colors of maple leaves, the department chair standing spry behind the plate as umpire. An early graduate student smacks a long one past center field. Cries the chair. Someone's fifth grade daughter taps an awkward dribble into the weeds. Fair, he cries. I hear the echoes, even now, the guffaws, protest, the rich astonishment of that girl ghosting her way around the bases. I could have played, thought then. There is room for me in this world. There, down, down, there. Even now, I am calling them as I go. Well, I was telling Tom, my 50th high school reunion in Corvallis is this weekend. I've never been to a class reunion of any sort, high school or college, but I'm going to this one. And Sharon and I are going. So I've been thinking about all these children I grew up with, haven't seen some of them for 50 years. And here's a little poem about one of them. You know, you grew up in a small town, you're with the same kids for 12 years at least. You get to know them, and this poem's about a little girl in the second grade that attracted my attention. Thomas Jefferson Elementary. Just because of your golden hair, the letters in cursive above the chalkboard sang their musical score. When we left to go home in the afternoon, the sun came out in a way it almost never did, and made us pause on that rain-pitted sidewalk beside the lawn with the spindly birches, the ones no older than ourselves. We were next to each other and laughing. Vicki, I had forgotten you until I remembered today. It's silly, I know, but every pursuit of happiness since has come to the same hands. ones that brushed against the air as if bringing color to the sky. Now I have to tell you that I believe Greg Shamoff was also at Thomas Jefferson Elementary School. He lived just 3 doors down. We played, not baseball exactly, I think we played with a tennis ball, old sack. But we still had some broken windows to prove our presence. I invited Paul Mann to come down to Santa Barbara a few years ago, and Paul had you led some wonderful writing workshops for us in addition to some readings. And in one of those workshops, you gave us a stabber. And it was about a little girl that didn't quite fit in. What's the title? Oh, what is it? Is it Libertyville?
Yeah.
At Liberty School, something. Yeah, oh, there you go. And you encouraged us to think about someone from our past that we had sort of ignored and give them, the respect of our attention in retrospect. So here's a poem I wrote in that little workshop. It's called Salvatore. Oh, it was the mile we ran together. I had some grace in the way I did it, or so I imagined. But you were the angular plodder, always staring down the lane to where you would be, following me across the line. Afterward, nobody spoke to you on the bus. Your thick black hair, your stony face, your dark shoes, big as a circus. On the back road, we watched you disappear into an unpainted house with walls made of rain and blackberry vines. Senior year, you moved into an old hotel down by the river with some girl. The carpet in the hallway there was stained with sourness and smoke. On Christmas Day, I left a red Swiss Army knife beside your door. Sal, did I know you? I remember your hard breathing just behind my right shoulder, the inexorable slap of your feet in those flat and broken tennis shoes as they cut at my heels around each bend. Well, I have mentioned my father in a couple of poems, poem about the library, and he was a biology professor at Oregon State University. He just passed away last month by old age of 96. He was healthy and alert to the end, which is a blessing, but which makes his absence more keen anyway. And we just had his memorial service in McMinnville on Saturday. So I want to read a poem in his honor. Back in the days when he was a junior high and high school science teacher in California, he spent 3 summers as a ranger naturalist in Big Basin Redwood State Park. And those were his glory days. Part of the reason he was hired, not only his science credentials, but he had attended a Bible college in California where everybody learned how to lead singing. And back in those days, the campfire singing was an important part of our national experience, and rangers needed to know how to lead singing during the campfire. He often described those things to us. Apparently, it was a split log sort of amphitheater. It seated 1,000 people. And he said on weekends it was standing. So this poem is called Campfire Program. There in front of the fire circle, in your big brimmed ranger hat. You stand at ease, arms waving hundreds of voices into song under the flashing redwood trees. On top of old Smoky, oh my darling, she'll be coming round the mountain. And the singers in their plaid flannel shirts, their pedal pushers, roasted marshmallows still sticky upon their fingers, all swell in time and in tune as your palm now makes invisible triangles in air, lofting the measures to the stars. This is America in the 50s, relieved to be quit of the good war and foot wanted, and glad to have issued from their roomy canvas tents parked next to their automobiles. And look there, Ranger. Your young wife from the Orange Grove is sitting on the split log bench in the front row, your 2-year-old pulling on her sleeve. Your young wife who is tired and wheezy and 4 months pregnant with me. About to go down with polio, though she does not know, and neither do you. She is gazing at you with admiration, and you think, yes, oh my darling, one more verse, folks, and just the women this time. Well, I mentioned in that poem that my mother grew up on a orange grove, which was outside of Anaheim, California. But her father grew up in the Willamette Valley, and the family was living in Portland during the Depression when they made the move down to Anaheim. I was told that someone in Anaheim said to my grandfather, I heard that up in Portland they roll up the sidewalks at 6 o'clock at night. And he said, well, I wouldn't know. I was always in bed by then. So this poem's called Common Ground. Today I dug an orange tree out of the damp black earth. My grandfather bought a grove near Anaheim at just my age. Like me, he didn't know much. How'd you learn to grow oranges, Bill? Friend said. Well, he said, I look at what my neighbor does, I just do the opposite. Up in Oregon, he and his brother discovered the Willamette River. They were both asleep on the front of the wagon. The horses stopped. His brother woke up. Will, he said, am it a river? My grandfather, he cooked for the army during the war, the first one. He flipped the pancakes up the chimney. They came right back through the window onto the grill. In the Depression, he worked in a laundry during the night, struck it rich in pocket knives. My grandfather, he liked to smoke in his orange grove, as far away in the property as he could get from my grandmother, who didn't approve of life in general, and in particular. Smoking gave him something to feel disapproved for, set the world back to rights. Like everyone else, my grandfather sold his grove to make room for Disneyland. He laughed all the way to the bank, bought in town, lived to see his grandsons born, and died of cancer before anyone wanted it to. Absent in the rootless presence of damp black earth. That was my Garrison Keillor writer's almanac. Yeah, he read it twice, and he read it twice. He didn't just push play. Isn't that impressive? Yeah. Well, grandmother in that poem, I'll read a poem about her. It's called Grandma Enema. My grandma spoke better German than English. She made custard and let us play jacks on her kitchen floor in Anaheim. We called her Grandma Enema because that is what she prescribed for anything that ailed us. And we feared that rubber hose in her bathroom, that warm water in strange places. In college, or a bit after, we planned the climb of Mount McKinley with 9 men and just 1 woman as members of the expedition. Grandma Emma was suspicious. "What do you need that woman for?" she would ask. "What's she going to do?" Nothing we said could put her at ease until one day my brother replied, "She's a nurse, Grandma. If we get sick, she will give us our Of course," she said, her face melting in satisfaction. A moment later, though, she was frowning again. "But up there on the mountain," she said, "the water would freeze." That Grandma Enema, she always looked out for us in the end. Yeah. Mentioned that expedition to Mount McKinley or Denali, which did take place, and that is featured at the end of this poem. But before that, right when I graduated from high school, I got to go up to the Juneau ice field for a summer as a student with some glaciologists. So, coming of age summer for me, away from home for 3 months. Came back, all grown up, I thought. So this poem's called When I Got Back. When I got back from the ice field, my mother said my laugh was different, more through the nose. I must have picked it up from that daring young climber, Eric Reynolds, who had shown me how to carry an ice axe and tie into a frozen boat. Eric Reynolds had led the very first ascent of the Taku Towers just that spring, the ones that rose across the 5-mile-wide expanse of the Taku Glacier, the glacier that I measured with a theodolite from spacious cliffside perch of stone. One night, I saw the blood moon rise and orange sunset on opposite shores of that river of ice, and then the stars, and that was nothing to laugh about. But my mother had lost the voice she knew. The most delighted sounds from his mouth, foreign braid, Pinocchio turned into an ass. I made it up to her, though, in a moment, by snatching a cookie from the glacier of our freezer, oatmeal, chocolate chip, and bringing it to the same wide mouth she had always known. 3 years later, my brother talked her into baking 1,000 cookies, 21 batches, for an expedition to Denali. They lasted frozen for over a month, but my brother came back without his fingers or his feet. That year, the only time I saw her smile was when we told her that Doug Scott, the British climber of world renown, who had helped us down that terrible summit, who had arrived at the summit himself with little more than a bag of prunes left in his pack. Doug Scott said He had never tasted better cookies in his life. I was mentioning that that brother lives down near Ashland, and he's devoted his life to the creation and expansion and defense of the Cascade Siskiyou National Monument. So, the injuries didn't stop. Here's a, during and after college, my Sharon and I worked in a mountain program, mostly in the Sierra, taking people backpacking and climbing, and somehow I ended up going to college in the Midwest. I was sort of armed that larger mountains, heading there to Illinois. So sometimes I hitchhiked. I don't recommend it, but we thought that was really cool back then. So this poem's about Catching a Ride, 1975. When the Colonel from Monterey picked me up at a gas station in Rock Springs, Wyoming, he said it was my short sleeves, no tracks to hide. I had just combined a bowl of grape nuts with powdered milk at a rusty sink in the men's room, having hitched a day and a night from Sawtooth Ridge in Yosemite. I never liked traveling east, away from the Sierra Nevada, but the Colonel, I had forgotten his name, made it unexpectedly easy at 59 miles per hour, just 4 miles above the limit, taking me all the way to college in the suburbs of Chicago, where I only missed the first half hour of my biology class. He was crossing the country to golf with his fellow survivors of the Battle of the Bulge, which was all he could talk about. How every one of his field commanders was shot dead before his eyes. How he became the one in charge at just my age. He couldn't believe he was still alive, driving across the summer snow of cornfields and autumn. Colonel, I salute you now, staring against those memories with a boy so full of his own adventures he hardly had an ear for yours. But violence makes us generous to our former selves. I know that now. And in the shadows of gas stations, of classrooms, I am the one still looking for the ones we were. Well, I did end up in the classroom as a young English professor. My first job was out in Western New York, and I was so proud of myself. So here's a little poem called Professional Development. My first year of college teaching, of visiting assistant professor, and my own office, perhaps, in a stately red brick edifice with a white wooden cupola looking out on unhills. And I, at my desk, lavishing a freshman essay with comment, helpful comment, like so many leaves coming to rest upon the margins of each book. That's when my mentor, poet, looked over my shoulder and said, "Son, you're putting chrome wheels on a maneuver spreader." Sharon and I have a son who's a musician. mostly on the drums, but some on the piano. And of course, as a young boy, he started on the piano. That's almost all of us fortunately or unfortunately do. This poem's called Piano. The summer you were 7, you could hardly sleep that night before your first recital. I'd rather break my arm, you said, which is what you did with an hour to spare. We could blame the dog who chased you into the glass door, but that would be dumb. A wish you found is a dangerous thing. Today, 8 years old and nearly Christmas, you asked to be the first on the program. As you sat waiting, sunlight fell on the bowl-cut line behind your head. Sometimes just a year is enough to learn to bring joy to the world. You have a daughter who's a runner. You know, during COVID, I don't know about some of you who write poetry out there. I found myself writing about vipers. I don't know if it was to cheer myself up. But occasionally I have published a volume of rhymed and meter verse. This is one. Little Rhymes for Lowly Planets. Here's a poem. Here's an epic poem. Upon attempting a half marathon with my daughter on my 60th birthday, here I sit, all broken-hearted, came to run and only start. While my daughter flees before like time's winged chariot out the door. If only I could thumb a ride, I would finish by her side. But as it is, I watch her fade and sip my nectar in the shade. Other men will cross the line, but I am feeling thanks just fine. For when I quench my antique rage, I'll walk a bit and have my age. Well, Sharon and I met on a long cross-country ski trip in Yosemite. So that place has always been important to me. And a few years ago, I was asked to teach a Bible as literature class. I was losing confidence as I went, so it sort of turned into a writing class. So we got to the Song of Solomon, and I said, let's all write something like this. Oh, this is what I came up with, called Yosemite Love. Your breasts are like twin water wheels that rush. Your knees are like young lodgepole pines down under. Your toes are like smooth pebbles. And your speech is like the curve of currents at the brink. But what am I? More like the ashes underneath the old retired firefall. Squat Pacific chorus frog, wreck-ecking from a granite crack. The bear who gets his paws immersed in pancake batter in the campground. You, the shapely curve of half-tone. That missing half in there. Well, Tom did mention I was fortunate to be a artist in residence in North Cascades National Park for, I think it was 4 weeks, so 1 fall and 6 weeks. homemade spring, which is a great gig if you can get it. You know, they give you a place to stay and you're just supposed to hike around and write poems with the band, which I did. I sort of think of it as your text offers. So came up with a book's worth, Deer and Twilight. The original cover had a very odd looking deer staring at you. And so my brother said we should call it Deer in Headlights. And then he said, no, for the Twilight, let's call it Vampire Deer in the North Cascades. So, working with the university press where they assigned these young master students to my books to work with them. So I wrote this young assistant editor. I said, well, these are the title suggestions. And she said, well, Deer in Headlights is a cliche actually, and your work's very original, so I wouldn't use that. But I really like Vampire Deer. I'll read just a couple here. Actually, a lot of these are quite short. David Oates here gave me the term haiku. This one's called Bleeding Heart. Finally, a flower after my own. You there, hanging in unashamed high-boughed clusters at the feet of ancient cedars. So few of them left, you know. Is that what breaks you? Is that what makes you wear your sweet pink ventricles on your green sleeve? You know where that expression comes from, to wear your heart on your sleeve? Are you nodding, Pauline? You're just saying, you're just following. It's Iago in Othello who telling Rodrigo about what a sincere person he is, and he wears his heart on his sleeve, which of course he doesn't. But here we are with the expression. I think we hired Wallace. Yeah, it did. Well, I'll just read two more. Here's one about a pine tree on the western white pine, and that's a banana shaped. And it's called Oh Western White. If you want to think of Oh Western Wind behind that, you can. Oh Western White. Oh Western White, your pine cones are the big bananas of the forest. Which puts me in mind, not that you'd be interested, of a friend who told me about an ad for washing machines on a television in Seattle. We've slashed, said the bouncing salesman. Out the door. You know it. Someone took him at his word. To the store. It went to court. The customer won. Which goes to show, Western White, you do not know how rich you may be. And I'll end with the title poem, Deer in Twilight. Yesterday evening, from my campsite in the forest on the edge of the reservoir, I saw a deer walk cautiously to the end of the long sandy point. So far I was. At first I thought it a coyote, or someone's dog, or who knows, maybe a wolf. But it was, in fact, a single deer, diminished by distance, a silhouette against the sheen. I could tell by the way it held its head innocently high and alert, and the way it bent its neck to drink. As twilight faded, I could not say if it were standing on sand or water. It was so quiet. The snowy peaks beyond were bathed in such pure glow that had the deer walked all the way across the lake, delicately printing the surface with each fine hoof, I would have bowed down and believed. Thanks a lot. So Tom, you said a little Q&A with your pattern. Yeah, well, cue away.
Well,
Yes.
could you talk about how you got started and about your development? And who influenced you?
Okay, how I got started with, yeah. Well, I didn't start out writing poems. I think I was a little afraid of them. I wrote these Rubik's cubes, and the teacher knew how they worked, and I didn't. So that's the. I did like to read, and I started writing some eco fantasy novels. Actually, they're back there. They're all collected. Big book called The Alpine Tales. My brother called them Narnia Comes to the American Wilderness. um, I think it was my first full-time teaching job, and I didn't know, you know, am I going to be a scholar? Am I going to be a creative writer? But, you know, my friends in this department were poets, and we met for breakfast once a week and looked at each other's work, and I brought chapters from these fancy novels they wrote. It's like, oh, what are these? And they didn't personally encourage me to write poetry, but I felt encouraged. And they took me to a reading at St. Bonaventure University. A fellow named William Stafford was reading. And I remember he took a piece of folded up paper, and the first poem he read was something he had written that day wandering around campus, which I thought was so gracious of him. And I had this sort of grounded view in his presence. Also went to a reading by Gary Snyder, and that was exciting. And, you know, and Snyder with the cascades and the Sierra had, you know, traversed some of that same home ground of the connection. And then when you're teaching full time, it's hard to write poems. But you can slip in a little draft poem here and there and feel a small sense. And I got better at writing faster than I got better at writing fiction. And so it just kind of took off from there. So when I think of my influences, of course there are many and varied, but I sometimes think of the three Williams. Stafford have mentioned, and his just sense of encouragement, like poetry's for anyone who has to try it. Wordsworth, I value deeply for his attention to nature and just sort of the trance-like state he could put me in. Went on an 8-day backpack trip in the San Rafael Wilderness with just Prelude, his song. By the end of that 8 days, I wanted to do whatever Wordsworth was doing. And then, of course, Shakespeare, William Shakespeare, who I wrote a dissertation about. I think just his versatility. Shakespeare can be so serious, and he can be so funny, and he legitimizes that range. You know? Yes.
I think like in retirement,
How do I like being retired?
Yeah. Like,
I've just been retired since December. And, we had a little tricked out tough shed put in the backyard. Big enough for a desk and bookshelf. It's pretty nice. But I'm still finding the rhythm of it. You know, I think, you know, any teachers in the audience, if you stop teaching, you realize, at least I realized, how much of your waking life is thinking about the last class, planning the next class, figuring out when you're gonna grade at least one of those 3 stacks of papers on your desk, you know. And then all of a sudden that's not a concern. Focus a little, you know, a little more sustained thing. So I recommend it if you're not there.
so you're not worrying, kind of worrying about it.
Not mornings?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I was in the classroom for 42 years. That's a pretty good amount of time, and I felt very good. I naturally like to teach. And teaching is a way to do that. But put in your time and time to move on. That's okay. Yeah. Yeah.
With climbing it.
Well, yeah, it was. I mean, it still is in a more measured way. I think I was a freshman in high school, and somebody took my brother and I up the system. It was midsummer, and of course, South Sister, you look north to that chain of peaks. There's South Sister, there's Middle Sister, the North Sister, there's Mount Washington, Bigger Jack, Jefferson Hood. You can see that far. Brother looked at me and he said, "Let's climb all those by the end of the summer." And some of them were more than walk-ups, so we thought, well, we need a rope. So we bought a 75-foot water ski rope. And we thought, this looks way too long, so we cut it in half. So we had a 37.5-foot water ski rope. We did a lot of dumb things. But yeah, I think I just enjoy that immersion in the mountains, challenge of climbing them. But what am I trying to say? I think there's a difference between a mountaineer and a climber. A climber is maybe a little more achievement oriented. A mountaineer just like being in the mountains. That's what I am today. Yes, in the back.
I want to know when you started reading your work publicly.
When?
When? And follow-up. How has your presentation evolved?
How's it evolved?
How's your presentation evolved?
Yeah. Well, I must have started maybe 33 years ago, taking part in community readings, and then eventually getting a few readings of my own. I think when I started, I felt I had to be funny. I had to hear the audience laugh, or I wasn't sure they were with me. And I probably erred on the side of reading, kind of jokey poems. And I was at a reading with some very good poets, and a fellow from San Diego, I think, Frank X Gaspar, that he took me aside afterwards. This was a reading for people who were in Best American Poetry that year, and I somehow got in there, and so I did some of these other people. And after, he was very kind to me, but afterwards he said, "Oh, I see you write your roundhouse songs. Roadhouse. And, ooh, that there was something to it, and I wasn't maybe trusting the audience with serious. So that's what I've been learning to do. I don't set out to be funny. It kind of happens, but I don't feel that I have to, that has to be all of what I feature in a meeting.
Well, and again, I'm kind of getting the very, like you talk about, the range. So I thought that there was maybe some Shakespearean influence. Very poised and presentation. It matches the depth.
Okay.
Sincerity. And that's what I was picking up on. So I was wondering if that was something that you incorporated on purpose or who you want.
Well, I probably slowed down a little. I think poetry is hard to take in by ear. It's not work. Is your hand up in the red coat? No. Oh, but I know. Yeah. Okay. Yes, it was an hour. Okay. Yes.
Can you talk about your mother's polio?
My mother's polio. Yeah, she was the. She was at Big Base at Redwood State Park, and the vaccine had come out, but they were reserving it for the children. And so she was scheduled to get the vaccine just a couple weeks after she contracted. So it paralyzed her pretty thoroughly for most of the year. And then she walked with a profound limp for most of her life, and then some of the other muscles were out. Actually, she was John Krakauer's father in our town. He also had polio, and in the support group together trying to manage this. But she was a very determined person. I think this is probably common for children of parents who have some physical impairment. It's invisible to the children. And, it's just my mom. She carries on. She was a force of nature.
But she was pregnant.
She was pregnant with me. Yeah, and there was some worry about whether I would be all right, but I was. Yeah. Yes, sir. Did I always want to be a writer? I think so. I remember I finished the first grade and found a book on the shelf, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And I made my way through it. It took me 2 weeks. But I could read just well enough that I could picture it all, and I got to the end of that book. I can't think of a better thing to do in life than write a book like that. That I had that mistake upon. So, yeah, so I think it was planned.
So I want to hear the story of the man on that wall about these 2 poets. Tell me how, maybe you don't know how everything.
That's great. Well, I mentioned John Krakauer. There are a lot of talented people in Corvallis. Not on Corvallis.
What was the question?
The question was, so Greg and I grew up in the same neighborhood, and she asked what nurtured our supposed talent. Magic. Well, okay, I'll take a stab at this. Wallace Stegner has a beautiful little book called The American West as Living Space. It's a series of 3 lectures he gave. And he talks about this birthright of Westerners, this open space around us, whether it's forest or desert, mountains. And And then he goes on to name several towns which he thinks are ideal in the West as combinations of culture and nature. And Corvallis is one of those towns that he names. Yeah. And then he ranks on Bernard Malamud, who came to teach at OSU for a little while, and Malamud, he wrote a novel about Corvallis County, where he just looks down on everybody.
That's a dark view.
Yeah, he thinks, you know, these grown men going fishing. And, but to Stegner, it's just a wonderful interplay of nature and culture.
One more question? Anyone? Okay. One more call? Huh? One more call? Yeah. Oh, that's right. Go ahead with the number one.
All right. This is my most recent book, Somewhere to Follow. And I'll read a poem near the end. I've been staying with my brother Dan, who's a analysis of a major creek in town called Baker Creek. And it's such a steep bank that you wouldn't really go down it unless you were very careful. So this poem's called Baker Creek. Maybe we can build a trail down to the creek, my brother says. So we poured a curtain of ripe cherries behind the lawn, slip beneath a big leaf maple, and follow a fence through sword fern to a drop. I point away past massive trunks of Douglas fir, but he favors a gully of blackberry vines head on. So in we go, submerged in a sea of light green thorns, until we are swimming a deer path across a narrow, grassy shelf. We follow it past a grand fir to a root web landing by a pool, dark and deep as the dough. Whether a real trail can foam, we don't know. But here we are, streamside, a brace of brothers at the bottom, our boots by the water we have only seen from above. And that's getting somewhere.
Oh, thank you so much. This was absolutely delightful. I want to say a little bit about a couple of things that are coming up. I didn't talk about earlier, but I did say that this is the end of our season. And as far as readings in Wednesday, we take August off, but we'll be back here the second Wednesday in September for our next season. We have the poets selected for the next year, and we're working on the schedule. Who's going to read when on the second Wednesday of the month beginning in September here at the Letting Library. So we hope that the invitation is going to be out around the 1st of August. That's our plan, somewhere around there. During the summer, we also do sponsor First Fridays with the St. John the Evangelist. And our First Friday event in August, which is going to be the 5th, I believe, is going to be Emmett Wigfall doing spoken word. And he's going to be accompanied by an accordion, Mark Greathouse. So we're going to have spoken word with Emmett Wigfall and accompanied by accordion music. And that's going to be in our August event. So we hope that the invitation will be out about that. The First Fridays are going to continue September and October. There are summer events. Again, thank you for being here. Thank you for spending the time with us, reading poetry. Thank you for hearing wonderful poet reading tonight. Let's give Paul another hand. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for being here. The books over there on the table. Paul, there's some refreshments, light refreshments back here. Help yourself. Thanks for being here.